Reverend, I'm going to start with you since you are the one who is with me. How do we get to a moment where that is a candidate's closing argument and that candidate is widely seen as a legitimate contender for a presidential race?
Well, first of all, I have to say, the first time I saw that campaign ad, I was just floored.
Really?
Of just the extremity and the boldness of literally placing yourself next to God in the creation story. It was just sort of flabbergasting, which is a sign, as you said, that Christian nationalism, white Christian nationalism, is not in any way on the decline. We have some things to celebrate with respect to the place of the decline of Christian nationalism potentially in the United States right now, but there's a lot that we have to be worried about.
I mean, this is someone who weeks ago, months ago, talked about to his supporters about arming themselves in the cloak of God to defeat Democrats, which I guess would make Democrats akin to evil, to the devil. I mean, there have been seedlings of this along the way.
Yes, throughout his campaign. And another one we could have pointed to is Herschel Walker's campaign in Georgia, where his main campaign message is the Protestant Reformation, quote, saved by grace, as if the sort of grace of God covers over all of the terrible things people have pointed to about his own life and his own record on abortion in his personal life and his relationship to women. I mean, it goes on and on. He's using a religious message to cover up that and present himself against a Baptist pastor who actually uses very little huge religious claims in his campaign ads.
I would say it is pretty unbelievable, Dr. Butler. At this point, I call very little unbelievable. Here's the thing with DeSantis. It's not just rhetorical, right? It actually, this idea seeps into his governance. Talk me through that.
Well, yeah, it seeps into his governance because the way he thinks about the world is that God has put him in that place to rule over Florida. And so when you see this, when he's against trans kids and the Don't Say Gay bill and all of this, this is part and parcel of what he sees his Christian nationalism to be. So when I saw that commercial, I just laughed because I was like, this is exactly who he thinks he is. He thinks that he has dominion over this earth and God has given it to him. And so it's very important to understand with the people who believe with Christian nationalism, like Ron DeSantis or others, they believe that God has given them dominion. And that dominion means they have dominion over everybody who doesn't believe in God, who doesn't think like they do, and that God created this nation for them and specifically for white men. And so I think that's a very important part of what we're seeing here with Christian nationalism. It's also about race.
Right. I'm so glad you said that because I wanted to tease that out with you, Reverend, because you corrected me when I called it Christian nationalism and said white Christian nationalism. Why is that distinction important?
Well, it's very important because you have, when you use the term Christian nationalism, you're by and large talking about the evangelical Protestant community in the United States. And the vast majority of Protestant evangelicals who are communities of color do not vote Republican. It is white Protestants who fall into this category, evangelical, who are following Ron DeSantis, and it is white supremacist. It has a long history in the United States of creating, just as Anthea was saying, a view of what a leader is, and it's a white person, and underneath it, seeping into it, is a white man, and it is always implicitly, if not bursting through the surface, explicitly racist.
Dr. Butler, you wrote for MSNBC.com, the large turnout of younger Generation Z voters and other voters disturbed by that Dobbs decision and the looming threat of authoritarianism from people pushing for an officially Christian nation stopped the predicted red wave from happening. It's part of why I'm interested in the Gen Z stuff, Dr. Butler, which is it's not just about what they did for this specific election. It is one of the trend lines that is emerging, one of the things we can look for to shape the next 20, 30 years of our politics.
That's absolutely right. What the Pew Forum has said in about 50 years, the nones, the people who don't have any religious faith whatsoever, will be the majority in America. And I think part of that has to do with, honestly, the way that evangelicals and Catholics, for that matter, have presented themselves as these very strict arbiters of what your morality should be. One of the things I talk about in my book, White Evangelical Racism, The Politics of Morality in America, is that this morality is used as a shield to fight to hide from everyone else. The sense of power that they want to have. They don't care about morality for themselves. This is why Herschel Walker gets a pass for 2 abortions, right? He gets a pass for beating women. He gets a pass for all of these things. He gets a pass because he's forgiven by God. But for the rest of you, you have to follow the rules. And you have to follow the rules because they have told you what the rules are. And so I think that's a really important part of why Gen Z doesn't want to have anything to do with these hypocrites, because it makes religion seem dull and stupid and very biased.
I have 1 minute left. I need an hour with the two of you, so hopefully you can come back and we can do this justice, because this is too big of a conversation. It just strikes me. I grew up Catholic, and I grew up and I was taught, love thy neighbor, not send thy neighbor on a plane to Martha's Vineyard not knowing what their future holds, right? And so to me, I wonder how Democrats, Republicans of faith, find a way back to that actual core Christianity and not this nonsense.
Well, now is an opening, a possibility of doing that, because what has been made clear in this election, that the wedge issue that evangelicals have plucked up and made an issue, abortion, is not going to do it for them anymore. Mm-hmm. The LGBTQ issue that they plucked out of nowhere and made a wedge issue is not going to create the moral high ground for them anymore. They are not capturing the new generation of voters in Gen Z. And they have a bona fide Baptist preacher on the ballot who's actually preaching the message that you just proclaimed.
Right.
So it's the bottom is falling out from underneath them ideologically. And they're either going to have to recreate new wedge issues or have some real, quote, come to Jesus meetings in that evangelical world.